What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another episode of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, you should know them by now, Richard Anderson, William T. Jones. I'm just going to start naming some random things here. Now, you should know everybody that's going to be on here. I've got Robert D. Felice.
At some point in this podcast, we're going to break the first and second rule of Raw Underground.
I thought you were going to say we're going to break the fourth wall. I'm like, we're already talking to other people.
That too.
And we're going to go with Steven Wago.
Yep.
And Callum Wiggins.
Hi, Cole Cabana. How you doing?
What's the Cole Cabana thing? It's over my head.
I'm breaking the fourth wall.
CM Punk is breaking the fourth wall. That's.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still tired. So anyway, what we're doing today is we're doing an edition of Going Over, which is essentially just a discussion. There's no gimmick, there's no theme, there's no list or anything that we need to follow. Just going to be talking. Kind of a regular podcast. We don't do these all that often, but we did one a few weeks ago or so, whenever the Becky Lynch pregnancy happened and Sami Zayn. God, I am tired. Sami Zayn dropped the Intercontinental Championship. That's the last one that we had done. So we're going to kind of do that again. And not only do we want to know what each other have to say about this topic, we want to know what you have to say. So by all means, you should keep the discussion going by dropping a comment below on whatever platform you're listening to us that has the ability to drop a comment. So Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, all that other kind of stuff doesn't. But if you are on the page on YouTube, then while you're there and you're leaving your comment, hit that like button on the video because that helps out quite a bit. Obviously, you should subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already, and ring that little notification bell because that will give you an alert for any time that we post new videos or we go live or there's any other kind of things that go along with that whole email notification system. So let's just kind of set the tone here. What we're talking about today is Raw Underground. It's something that happened on Monday night. It's something that we don't know all that much about, but that's kind of part of the speculation here. We're going to talk about comparisons to Brawl for All, what we think about the concept in general, where we see this going in the future, who can get a push out of it, all the other kind of things that go along with this. We're just going to kind of take something that would have normally been a part of the hot tags and we're going to expand on it because there's still quite a bit of other things to talk about on the hot tags, and why overload that one and then have some kind of completely random thing this week like the heel or face or something like that when we can kind of expand on our discussions a little bit. So I guess the first thing to ask is first impressions. What'd you guys think? Who wants to start?
1,
guess
2,
I'll
3, big piece of shit. So I hated the porno music that they constantly played in the background. It was totally took me out of the moment. I hated the jump cuts during all the action. It's, as far as first impressions go, I definitely think there's legs for the idea, but what should have been a dark, gritty, more underground feel ended up being kind of goofy.
Yeah, I'm probably in a pretty similar boat. It's not the worst idea they've ever had, but it's just the jump cuts, the awful music that's been played, the fact that it's been hosted by Shane McMahon and everything about surrounding that. I just feel if it was any other promotion, and I don't want to go any other promotion, but if it was another promotion that was trying to do a little bit more of a gritty underground Fight Club feel, I'd have a bit more faith in it. But I think WWE is going to overproduce it. It's going to get tired after 3 weeks, and it will eventually go away after 3 months.
While I agree with everything those men just said, I still really enjoyed this. Listen, I've watched far too many of these performance center shows. This was at least fun. It felt like something was happening that was different and fresh. And the whole time throughout the day when they announced that Shane would be on the show and all the different things they announced for Raw, which we will break down on the hot tags, you at least felt like Raw was going to be worth watching. And anything that gets Father Tunde on TV is a thumbs up. So I'm all for Raw Underground.
We're definitely going to talk about him. I'm kind of splitting the difference a little bit. I'm not super impressed, but I like that they're trying something different. It's not something that I feel is going to be some catch-all solution to their problems, turn the ratings around, get all all the people who haven't been watching wrestling for a long time to watch it. But I do think if they don't try something, they're never going to come across the solution. So it's worth a shot to try. It's probably going to fail, probably very quickly. But maybe it doesn't. I thought that plenty of other things would have gone down a lot sooner. I thought that a lot of wrestlers would have been crap and they ended up being great. I thought a lot of bad ideas were gonna prove themselves bad immediately, and then they ended up proving me wrong. So I can't really say that it's like a guaranteed failure. It's not something that's like so abundantly clear that it's bad, but it is it's a little bit weird. Maybe I'll start with this kind of top. Well, not really start. We already started, but maybe I'll go with this as one of the first things to talk about. What do you think about the name? Because I like the name, but I see a problem with it in the future. If they do have this catch on and they kind of want to expand it, it's already got the Raw name in it. You sort of can't do Smackdown Underground and Raw Underground and NXT Underground or whatever. So they
Why
would
not?
have to change it to WWE Underground, right?
Yeah, but that's a very easy fix. And I think, remember, they tried this in a similar way last year when they were like, oh, we're going to turn the lights down for the third hour and we're going to make it gritty. And that's when they introduced the 24/7 title to give the third hour a different vibe. If it turns into WWE Underground, I think that's great. If it only goes for about 2 months, which I think is more than likely what's going to happen, as long as it gets some people over and it presents a different style, I'm okay with it.
The Raw Underground.
Go on.
I'd say the Raw Underground name reminds me a little bit too much of Lucha Underground, which did have this kind of gritty, very like hidden away wrestling promotion feel to it, and I feel like they're trying. Obviously, they're going with more of an MMA style with the actual presentation of it, but I feel like it's taking a few elements from that promotion in terms of its actual overall presentation. But it's going to be a WWE version of it, which won't be as well. It's going to be cleaner, and that's going to make it worse.
Yeah, but they're fortunate that only 3 people ever watch Lucha Underground, so they don't really have to worry about people drawing comparisons, I don't think. As far as the name goes, it's fine. They come up with so much hokey crap, I'm just thankful that it isn't terrible.
Well, the Underground name isn't the part that I find problematic with it, because there are lots of underground, if you just say the word underground, it doesn't immediately make you think some kind of a Fight Club type thing. But there has been some other things that are associated with that term where you can kind of understand that. It's not like it's called something completely different where it would just be called like WWE, I don't know, like a Happy Time Hour or something like that, where you'd be like, what the hell is this? Like the Underground name, it is supposed to be dark and gritty and grungy and whatever like that. And yeah, if they could have been worse, they could have called it WWE Grunge Fighters or something stupid, or tried to get into the early 2000s thing where it's like extreme something where it starts with the letter X instead of EX, or Battle Smash Blood Pro Club Fighter something, like some kind of crap like that where they're trying too hard to sound cool. They could have named it something really lame like WWE Fight with a Y. There's a lot of worse options that they have out there. The only thing I think
they actually had options from old IPs they could have used too, because they own the IP for Raw Warzone, right? So they could have gone with that. That would have been cool.
You know what? That I would have maybe liked that better. Let me bring that up.
No, if you call it Warzone, it's people have too many memories of like the Attitude Era stuff. You needed to call it something new.
Do you think that would be something people would bitch and complain about these days?
Yeah,
Warzone, oh my god, it's making me upset. It's reminding me of that. It's like, no, people should complain about Underground and be like,
WWE's Pro War. They go to Saudi all the time.
If you want to take it from an old IP, you could have called it Breaking Point.
Yeah, you
But
know
yeah,
what?
that's always a good name.
I love that name, Breaking Point. It's a shame that they don't use it more. It's only been used that one pay-per-view and then for a game system mechanic, right?
Right.
It's like they're wasting that. I mean, that would have been a great name. A lot of other names that they have the option for, they shouldn't have, and you can't call it Great Balls of Fire, but like, um, yeah, if they would have gone with WWE Breaking Point, that would have been cool. If they would have gone with the Warzone thing, like Raw is War, like they've done that before, so the Warzone, like that would have been pretty cool. And then Warzone itself doesn't have the Raw specific connotation to it, where you can't really expand it to other than that, because I think it would be kind of lame if they did decide to do NXT Underground, SmackDown Underground, and then at that point you're using three names that you're trying to trademark or something. At that point, just call it WWE Underground.
I don't think it will evolve or spread into the other two shows just due to the fact that they're both 2-hour shows. I think the reason why they've decided to go with the Raw Underground is in large part due to the fact they want to try something new to try and fill that third hour of content that they have to produce. And so it makes sense for if one show is going to have it, it's going to be Raw.
Well, that brings up another thing, is filling that hour means using this type of content. And one of the things that I think is majorly problematic with this, and they have to fix it going forward, they can't have what they did this week, which was, let's show Shane McMahon backstage saying, at 10 o'clock, we're going to show you this thing that you're already seeing in the background. And then around 10 o'clock, they just start intercutting little bits here and there where they're like, and this fight's been happening backstage, and then this thing is whatever. We're going to check back on that later. They can't just keep doing that and make that sustainable, because if you like the concept, you're not going to watch the entire episode hoping for little interstitial bumpers.
That was a big problem for me. Like, I was expecting way more from it. The whole thing needs a presentation overhaul, but you're definitely right. That's like one of the main things that they need to address.
Because, I mean, if you are a big fan of it, are you going to sit through all the other segments you don't want to watch just in the hopes that maybe they'll cut away to something like that? No. We're in an era where people watch things on YouTube just to get the clips of the things, as opposed to watching the actual full episode. Or they DVR everything and then they'll just skip through and go, okay, well, I'll check that out afterward. And, oh, who's winning this fight? Okay, it's whatever. Fast forward, move to the next thing. Yet, at the same time, if you're the type of person who doesn't like it, and they keep intercutting this for a 3-hour show or the last hour or whatever it is, then you're going to treat that as a bathroom break. And if WWE does what they normally do, where they have like, here's a recap of what happened last week, and then now this person's going to come out and cut a promo, and then that promo is going to include a video clip of something that they've done, where they say, well, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out this clip and whatever. And then they talk more, and then you cut to a commercial, and then you come back from the commercial, and it's a backstage segment, and then they run a little recap, and then somebody comes out, and they introduce that KFC's got this new whatever. If you throw all that stuff in a row, which they've had a tendency a lot recently of having like a full solid 10-15 minutes of like, can you move on to something? And then you don't like this Raw Underground thing, and then they cut away to one of those things thinking that you're giving them some actual content. People are going to go, well, there's a whole 20-something minutes that I don't have to watch.
I mean, I kind of agree with you in a sense, but I also go with the idea that that's just how people consume content nowadays. You can't really fight against it. Like, people are just gonna just cycle through shows regardless of what they put on, like the third hour or anything like that. It's like, I know it's the idea of like interspersing the Raw Underground thing doesn't. I don't know whether I would prefer it to be like in one like half an hour chunk at 10 o'clock. Like at 10 o'clock to 10:30, it's Raw Underground, then you get the main event at the end of the show. I just don't feel like I just feel like people will just skim through the bits they want to see anyway. That's just how people consume WWE and most content nowadays. It's just you pick out the clips and you skip through the stuff you don't want to see.
Well, if they can establish like the full third hour will be this Raw Underground and it's a different feel, then you can get people in the mindset of, okay, if I tune in at 10 o'clock for this Raw Underground thing I like, I can just watch that. And then you can see, okay, what are people tuning in for? What are people tuning out for? Because you'll have that specific divide. If you keep doing the random interspersed fights, you can't tell, okay, but are people liking this Raw Underground, or are people just sticking around to see whatever the main event of the show is going to be?
I just feel like when you do that, though, I mean, it could end up like as a bit more of a positive influence with just you finding out, but then maybe it will just get to the point where, okay, so Raw Underground is probably more popular, so the entire 3 hours is now Raw Underground.
That's literally how we got the Attitude Era, though. It was, okay, we'll do 1 hour of Warzone where, we'll do some more risque stuff, and then, okay, so we'll just turn it into Raw is War because everybody's liking this risque stuff.
I can't see them going full on the last hour is like that for more than maybe like a special just to see what happens or something. But if it's popular enough, I assume that they just do another spin-off show and just have like, well, we're going to do the Raw Underground stuff at 11 after Raw or something like that. And you're going to find that on the free version of the WWE Network or, like one of those kind of things.
Yeah,
But if they were to try that, though, and if it were to get, because the difference with that is if you set aside the time and you tell people, hey, at 10 o'clock, from 10 o'clock onward, this is going to be this Raw Underground thing. And a lot of people tune in, there's like a bump, then you know that people don't want to watch Raw, they want to watch that. But if there's a massive switch over and everybody stops watching at 10 o'clock, you know that people don't give a shit about it. And then you drop the concept entirely.
I think it's all going to be about like this start, as whether you kind of loved it or hate it. It's hard to tell just off the base of the first instance of it, because like the best part of the entire Raw Underground experience for me was the ending with the Hurt Business taking over it, and I think this could be a really good vehicle to get at least Bobby Lashley, but probably all three of them even more over, because the Hurt Business name is good, and based on like both Bobby Lashley's MMA background, and I know that MVP and Shelton Benjamin have both like amateur and other fighting backgrounds, then they could actually use this, even if it doesn't last too long. This could be the thing that establishes them even further than they have been before. But we won't really know about how well it's. I mean, the one good sign is that their ratings went up this week when they're expecting to get like a record low, because now all the major sports are back. It's likely that their ratings will plummet even lower than they have been recently. So I guess that's one good sign for them, but we won't really know about how long it's clicked, or whether it's just the novelty of this happening for a couple of weeks, the same way that the what was it called, the shake up, not shake up, the where they were switching between brands for no reason.
Wild card rule.
The wild card rule. That's it. Yeah, because that kind of gave them a bump for 2 to 3 weeks, and then it just completely fell off, because you can only really get away with doing novelty stuff once or twice, and then whenever you start putting just new things forward every single week, people are eventually going to get tired of it.
Well, they threw so much shit at the wall on Monday, but Raw Underground seems like the one thing that might be like different from the rest of it. Yeah, you got this new faction, but that'll be a part of like regular Raw. But still, this Raw Underground thing is going to be its own thing. And I see no way that this doesn't end with Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, but it's a great way to build Bobby Lashley back up after wasted 6 months with the Lana bullshit and the, all that. This is going to make Bobby Lashley look like a killer. So at the very least, it's good for that.
Well, I think it's important with the ratings to remember they didn't advertise this. They advertised something. And if you've got that mystery, people tune in to find out what the mystery is. So, there was a lot of speculation going in that he was going to lead up the stable. There was going to be, all sorts of different types of things. Not a whole lot of time before Raw started that it came out that it was going to be some kind of a Fight Club thing. So you can't really at the same time, if you're WWE, look at this and go, we got a ratings bump, which means people like this. It's more so we got a ratings bump because we promised that something was going to happen, and people want that, like, what's that mystery type of thing. And next week, if the ratings are atrocious, then you know that the Raw Underground thing didn't land because people aren't going to go and rewatch that again. But if it ends up being that they advertise, like, you know, major upgrade to the Raw Underground, we're going to start getting into this a whole lot, and they make that like the big focal point, and it ends up doing really well, then they know that the thing really landed and that people actually do like the concept, at least at first. I think that that's something that they can't lose track of. Last
I
thing that
think
they
for the
need to do is like
first,
pat themselves in the back that this is like, well, we figured it out, and that's going to be all the ratings problems, you know?
I think for the first few weeks they need to continue advertising like, hey, big big segment coming tonight, because that really got people to tune in. And then when they find the rhythm with this underground thing or whatever it is, even if it's the new faction, then you can start to lay off of that a bit. But right now, I think they should stick to announcing that, hey, this is going to be, something different. Like, tune into this, because it really did work this week. And a lot of people were very excited to see, okay, what is everything happening on Raw?
Now, Wago, you are a big MMA fan, and I'm unfamiliar with a lot of just even like the specifics and the generalizations of MMA and all that. As somebody who is an MMA fan, they obviously want to bring some of that audience over. And if you were to be looking at this, do you have the kind of philosophy to it that I would think that a lot of people would have, where if you wanted to watch MMA, you'd watch MMA, you don't want to watch WWE pretend to be MMA?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a right way to do pro MMA and pro wrestling, and it was called Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle at Lockdown. This, I there's nothing worse than bad MMA, and then there's nothing worse than people trying to pretend to do MMA and making it look bad. They've got this weird. If they want to do this right, they're going to have to be really selective in the talent that they pick, because if you're going to bring in MMA-esque moves, you want the shit to look right. You want it to, like, for instance, I saw Dolph Ziggler fucking in the background. No one wants Dolph Ziggler in this type of environment. You get the guys like a Matt Riddle. You get guys like Bobby Lashley. That was a great pick on their part. You need guys that are going to present the style in somewhat of an authentic way, because it looks like hokey bullshit right now.
Well, Ziggler does have the Kent State background. It's not like he's, completely just being
Yeah, but
thrown
he's
in there
never
because
given me the
Ziggler.
impression that he can hurt another human being. He's kind of like John Morrison in that way. There's just guys that don't present themselves as a tough guy, and it's not going to come through. You either have it or you don't, and he doesn't.
Well, Ziggler, with the whole amateur wrestling thing, if they would have showcased more of an amateur wrestling side, for him, he was just wailing on someone.
Yeah, he should have been more in the grappling aspect of things. And like I said, it's the first week. I hope they stick with it and they don't just throw it in the trash in 2 weeks, because you can really get something good out of this. And if nothing else, it's like going to at least introduce, I guess they're calling him Dabakato now, but Babatunde, and he can be a great monster heel for Drew or anybody really on the Raw brand. And they do need new stars. And maybe the bulk of this is just to get Shane McMahon manages Babatunde. I don't know.
Well, I guess let's talk about that. Babatunde, we know him a little bit from some things in NXT. He was a part of was it the greatest
The
greatest Royal Rumble,
yeah.
I think. Yeah. He was a part of that. He did that Evolve show. He's big. A lot of people aren't. He's now Dabakato. The name itself, I don't know. I'm not sold on it yet, but it's not the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
I don't know. I couldn't remember his previous name. I just used to call him Bobo Rotunda. Just like that's close enough.
Now, for some reason, since we mentioned Colt Cabana earlier, and that the whole boom boom Colt Cabana, I'm thinking just like Bo Rotunda. Uh,
I'm gonna have a hard time remembering his new name, but I guess it's better than the last one.
I don't know if that's supposed to be any kind of like if there's a meaning behind it, or if there's like a maybe that's some family members stuff or whatever. I don't know. Dabakato doesn't ring any bells for me, but Callum, like, you thinking anything higher or lower about Babatunde? Is this going to be the thing that makes him break out, or is this something that's just he's just doing it and that's the end of it?
Hard to really say for certain. I mean, I think it's definitely like it's a start, which is a good thing. But can I really say that this is going to be like the big standout point for him? Because I don't really know what his quote unquote credentials are to be a fighter. Because it's a good start for one-off like 2-minute brawl, but can he kind of sustain it going forward? Can this be kind of a gimmick that he can carry forward beyond Raw Underground when they actually either go beyond this or when he actually has to get into the ring and put some stuff together? I haven't really seen enough of him either from like the Evolve work or anything beyond that that's really tells me whether he's going to be successful in this gimmick or not. I think if you were to partner him up with someone like a Samoa Joe as a mouthpiece, maybe that could be something that works down the line. Right now, it's just he seems a bit too raw for me to really get a steer on one way or the other.
And at the point, it's Raw Underground.
That's right.
You bring up Samoa Joe. That's a guy they need to get in Raw Underground. Instead, he's fucking feuding with Seth Rollins.
Joe would be great for this. I'm gonna just throw this out there right now. A lot of rumor about a potential draft upcoming. Put Baron Corbin on Raw. Put him in Raw Underground and let him beat the shit out of people, please. Get rid of the King gimmick. Let Baron Corbin just beat the crap out of people.
Yeah,
See,
that'll put butts in seats.
You know what? As much as I support a Baron Corbin push in a lot of ways, I feel like he does better with that sort of like persona than to just be another guy that fights people. Because I'm worried that one of the problems that's going to happen with this has already kind of peaked, where we mentioned it a little bit earlier about the idea that Dolph Ziggler was just punching people. Eric from the Viking Raiders was just punching people, and Dabakito was just taking people down and punching them, and that's basically all they were doing. And after a couple of those segments, I was like, all right, is everything just going to be you tackle the guy, you punch him until the referee says, all right, that's enough after about 30 seconds? If that's the case, I don't need to bother watching it. And if everybody is just another guy in street clothes doing that, they all seem the same.
Should they stick with just MMA or should they go with the more hardcore route? They're saying this is Raw Underground. Can I just go grab a fucking whatever's lying around and smash someone with it? There's no rules, right?
They said there's no rules.
They don't have to stick with an MMA feel. This can be a more gritty, because like the one thing that they need to really work on is violence. It doesn't feel violent enough.
No, I was already just going back and watching a few bits and pieces from it, and yeah, like I said, I liked the part where the Hurt Business takes over, but the actual stuff they were doing just didn't look like it was landing at all. It looked like phony wrestling bullshit, which is what it's a phony bullshit wrestling company, so of course they're going to do stuff like that. But you have to make it. I mean, this is something where actually cinematic stuff might actually be to the benefit of the company, because you can, well, if you're a decent enough film company, which WWE somehow proclaims itself to be, you can put together some really good looking fight scenes and make them look like people beating the shit out of each other. The presentation they have at the moment, it just looks, well, it's okay in a ring where there's a crowd and you expect the pageantry and you don't want people to hurt each other. But when you're actually trying to, like, they're trying to present a really gritty, realistic fighting experience, it just doesn't land well enough at all.
Well, they can't do blood. They can't use certain weapons. Like, we're never going to get chair shots to the head anymore. So if they start doing the whole, like, we need to do this more violent, they're just going to do kendo sticks, which is ridiculous. And nobody cares about that anymore, which that'll make that seem less impactful when it happens on the regular wrestling. And they've got this issue with this cinematic matches, and they've already applied it to this too, even though this isn't a cinematic thing yet, where they add this background music track. And
It's
I
so terrible. Like, I just want silence and people roaring and making the
right.
atmosphere themselves in a nice echoey building, make it feel gritty, make it feel like Fight Club.
Yeah, because you don't need this like background track of this kind of nonsense. And if they do it more cinematic, the way that they've done the other things, they've only gotten worse with that. They've added like sound effects basically. They're gonna start doing that with this. It's gonna come off even hokier. But they need to get that feeling, that atmosphere going for sure. And one of the things about the atmosphere that they need to establish is some actual rules, because if it's no rules, it needs to be no rules. It can't be, oh my God, it's no rules except for when we decide that we don't want this or whatever like that. You need rules for people to break in order for them to seem kind of, out there and cool. And you need rules just for people to kind of establish what the hell they're watching. Because if you turn this on out of nowhere and it's got this background track playing and it seems like it's fake fighting, and they act like it's like, oh man, like, all these people are doing this crazy stuff and it's no rules, yet the referee is stopping the fight sometimes when somebody gets like taken down and they're just not defending themselves. Yet in other situations, somebody can throw them outside of the ring, pick them back up, and do whatever. There's nothing to kind of go, oh wow, they did that instead of that, or whatever. And then if everybody blends in together and they all seem like the same fighter too, then you might as well watch clips of fights on World Star. But then even that, it's got different variety to it and no
Well,
actual rules and stuff. Like there's more value to that.
if they actually cut the third hour and give it to Raw Underground, they don't actually have to worry about all the bullshit rules they've set for themselves. They can just advertise that hour of Raw being for the 18 to 35 demographic. I don't know what TV rating you guys use for it, but have it actually just you can like make it basically a separate part of the show, where to the point where you can have blood, you can have more violent shots, treat it more like a movie. You've got the cinematics to get away with making a lot of violent stuff, doing a lot of violent stuff without actually doing it. They've got a lot of things that can benefit them, but I think they really need to dedicate that hour to just being for an older demographic. And that way, when they can really make something out of not having rules.
I
Otherwise,
agree with that 100%. Like, you have shows like Game of Thrones, and even on channels like FX, you've got Sons of Anarchy and stuff like that. Like, there's blood on these channels in the middle of the week. You can do whatever you want. You just have to make it known that, hey, we're gonna try this so that we can branch out and increase our ratings, and in turn increase the profit we can provide our shareholders. Like, just go balls to the wall with it. I like the idea of this Retribution faction, whatever they're gonna be. What if they just invade Raw Underground and they look like smaller guys? Let they just pick up a pipe somewhere that's laying on the floor and bash Bobby Lashley over the head. Like, it would be fun to watch. At least it would be something different. You have a lot of room with this. The only way this goes down, with a whimper, is if they just say, oh well, we tried it, let's just throw it away. They are in total control of this.
Well, they're not in total control because USA has to sign off on it.
Yeah, and so do their sponsors. And they are a PG company still. And I know that everyone says, oh, you should experiment with this. And they do have certain reign over this stuff, but will they actually risk losing sponsorships in order to entertain a new customer base? Because at the end of the day, they've shown time and again they don't care about customers; they care about money from sponsors.
Right,
they're
but
a
I
PG
think
company, but they're a PG company that still produces content that is for a mature audience. They have stuff on the network that's definitely not aimed at kids, and they still have advertisers. Just no way they can definitely do it. As long as USA signs off on it, I don't think it's going to be an issue for sponsors.
And how many times have we heard, well, USA was giving us a hard time and we turned their thing against them and then they loved it. Just take a fucking chance. If they really don't like it, then you can backtrack later, but take a chance.
I think the only way they can really accomplish that is if they start marketing it as from 10 o'clock onward, Raw Underground starts. Maybe if they don't like do a full hour of that, because maybe they don't cut that short or whatever like that, do the other show stuff. But if they say the Raw Underground stuff begins at 10, in a similar way that they did that whole, it was like what, 2 weeks of them trying to act like the third hour of Raw was something dark and gritty, which all they did was like lower the lights a little bit. That was one of the stupidest concepts that they've ever done. I really hated that with all my friggin' passion.
They
But-
lowered the lights, they changed a little bit of the graphics, and they had Sami Zayn say AEW.
It's so awful. We are firmly in this era ever since right around the time that they started advertising that Lars Sullivan would return or would move up to the main roster. I mean, we're in this stupid era where they were like, crap, we got a lot of things that we need to fix, so let's go out there and say we're doing something, and then just go, well, we figure that out. And it's like, imagine that was the case. Imagine if all you had to do was say, I got it. And then everybody just went, okay, you don't have to actually do any of it. You just have to say that you're working on it, and that's all that matters. And WWE's been trying to coast on this idea for like, how long is this now? 2.5 years since then or something?
Yeah,
Maybe 1.5 years?
It's rapidly approaching a year and a half, 2 years. It's been bad, but I think the most recent investor call was something unique where one of the shareholders who represented a big investment firm must have really been a fan, because he was just like, yeah, okay, and why do you think AEW and NXT don't suffer as much as Raw and SmackDown's ratings? And why did you fire Paul Heyman? And the only thing that Vince could get out immediately was, that was a lot. And it just seems like they're not prepared for actual questions about their content.
That's how a company fails. You know?
I mean, just to not to round up off or anything, but just to my overarching concern about Underground in particular is because I get the shaky feeling because WWE was always trying to profess like they want to change and they're doing things and they're trying to respond to situations, but they always fall back into old habits. I know Rob was talking earlier about the fact that Underground would be successful if he gets somebody over. What if the person that Underground is supposed to get over is Shane McMahon?
That's one of the topics I wanted to talk about for sure. I am very, very worried. We're gonna come back to some of these other topics too, by the way. I want to talk about some other people that could be could do a great job in this kind of separate little promotion, and some of the ideas that maybe it's not a little risque as it should be or whatever like that, but we should definitely talk about this. I am very worried that the entire point of this, even if it's not their plan right now, because I think we're all in agreement. They have no plan right now, right?
No, they have nothing.
This is just let's do it and see what happens and go from there. It's typical WWE. We'll figure it out later, and if we don't figure it out, we're just going to ask you to accept our forgiveness and not even necessarily apologize. We'll just pretend like it didn't happen, and you'll fucking get over it, like that kind of thing. But I'm worried that either their plan is right now or their eventual direction is going to switch over to, why don't we make Shane McMahon the focal point where somebody picks a fight with him and he has to go through the Raw Underground gauntlet and prove that he's this tough fighter, and he does those little punches that he does and whatever. I can fully see that being where this goes.
Are you saying you don't want to see the first ever WWE Underground champion, Shane McMahon?
He is the best in the world.
I think
Right.
their immediate thought was, let's saddle this on Shane because A, he's here, B, Triple H already has NXT as his little underground thing, and C, he's the cool McMahon. Like, you can't stick Stephanie in underground, like you can't do that. But Shane, you can believe that the guy who's kind of always been seen as the cool rich white dude, he'd probably start an underground fight club and have go-go dancers and stuff. I think that's their thought process. And hey, you'll forgive us if we didn't keep him off of TV for a year because we need something new.
And at least if you did put Shane McMahon in, I don't even know if you can call it a ring because he doesn't have any ropes, but you put him into the underground arena and at least still make everyone else's punches look good.
Well, see, I don't dislike the idea of Shane McMahon being a part of it because he does make sense in some ways. Like Rob
Yeah, he
said,
tried to
Triple
buy the
H has NXT. Stephanie's the brand officer, so she's not going to be a part of this kind of stuff. She's out there doing what's that thing called? Not TikTok. The other thing that they were trying to do a little bit is like 5-minute shows or something.
Quibi.
Quibi, yeah, like she's doing that kind of shit. She's not going to do a Raw Underground thing. And Shane fancies himself a fighter in some ways. He's wrestled before. He's been a part of lots of other kind of things like that. So, like, using Shane in that capacity makes sense to me. I'm just worried that they're going to go, well, goddamn, why don't we push Shane in this? Why don't we make a story out of Shane? And then it just becomes the Shane vehicle.
Well, I'm just saying, like, a guy like Bobo Rotunda can definitely get a lot out of having Shane manage him. I've already forgot his name legitimately. He's just Bobo Rotunda to me now.
Dabba-Kato.
Dabba-Kato.
Yeah. He can, like, a guy like that can definitely benefit from Shane. He's a nobody right now. For as much as people are sick as having Shane on their television, he very much is a well-known character. He fits. He wanted to invest in MMA at some point, so it's not like he's completely out of the realm of where he should be. I just worry about him becoming a badass on on their television when he shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's
I
kind
think
of the.
Go ahead.
So that's the the big concern. It's just that not that he's promoting the thing, or he's presented as a promoter, or he could be a manager for Cappuccino, or whatever his name is. But it's just the case that it's always end up leading to a Shane McMahon match, or a Shane McMahon applying one of his deadly triangle chokes or something along those lines. And I just don't think they can help themselves, because as soon as a McMahon is involved in a story, it becomes about a McMahon. It doesn't become about who's involved in the actual fighting or wrestling side of it.
And
I think if they give that a
be...
rest for a handful of years, they'll get a lot of mileage out of it when, Stephanie and Shane's kids are old enough to then rerun that story in a different way. But right now, I wouldn't put a McMahon at the forefront of anything.
I don't think a lot of people would, but I feel like they definitely will. I think that you got to figure it's not necessarily 100% an ego thing. Sometimes it's motivated by ratings and stuff like that, but there is ego and ratings and some other different factors that go into it. Like WWE frequently thinks back to the Stone Cold and Vince McMahon thing as like, well, people tuned in to watch that. So they keep thinking if you do a McMahon angle, people are going to tune in to watch it. So you had how long of Shane McMahon with the whole best in the world thing? It was like a solid
Wasn't
year
as
almost.
long as it felt. I think maybe 8 or 9 months.
It felt like it was going on for like a solid year. And that was like, they were dragging that out as long as they possibly could. It could have really not even started. And even when it started, it could have ended at WrestleMania. And then they just kept it going, and then it just fizzled out and everything. Like, they love doing McMahon angles. If you put Shane in this, and it's an opportunity for him to be like this tough fighter and do that kind of thing, he's gonna end up doing it. Whether it's a Shane pitch or a Vince pitch or a Bruce Pritchard pitch or whatever it is, like somebody's gonna bring up the idea, whether it's a week from now or 5 weeks from now or 3 months from now, that this should turn into a Shane McMahon angle. It's 100% going to happen.
Is there anyone you would have rather had present it? It's a shame they fired. Well, they haven't fired Heyman from being in WWE, but he would have been a good option for someone to present it.
Like, Heyman's a good choice. I know that this is probably just due to the fact that he mentioned it on a thing that WWE presented with. They were doing like a watch along of SummerSlam '92, but CM Punk would have been a good choice. Maybe
that would have been a good choice. Maybe he could have joined in and got a couple of wins in MMA for the first time.
I mean, Samoa Joe would also be a good choice if you wanted to like keep him away from keep him away from the actual competing side of things, but have him either be an announcer or to lead the organization instead. It just having it being run by McMahon means that eventually it's going to become about a McMahon, and that means that even if it was successful for a short term, eventually it's just going to be looked upon as a disappointment.
Well, maybe bring in an outsider, like you've mentioned
The Razor
Chael's.
Ramon.
You mentioned Chael Sonnen before. What about having him show up and be like,
Oh,
"Hey,
he'd
I
eat that
just
shit up. He'd love it.
I just signed in to a WWE contract, and you know what I'm doing? Well, I'm not fighting. I'm not doing commentary. I'm the promoter for this extra little thing on the side, or like." Then maybe that would even get some mainstream coverage where people would be like, "Oh, wow, the WWE is stepping into this kind of game. They have an MMA guy a part of this. This is." I mean, you can't really use like Cain Velasquez as that type of guy, but they have people that are in like the UFC, MMA type of spectrum that they have partnerships with in some kind of capacities. Like, they could have done something like that, I think.
There's a few MMA guys that like to get involved in pro wrestling. I don't think Chael Sonnen's going to bring many eyes to the product compared to when he was actively fighting, but definitely be the perfect guy to be a presenter. The guy can talk for days.
The problem that you
Like
guys
Callum
are
said, anything other than a McMahon.
the problem that you guys are forgetting here is they didn't know about this 2 days beforehand. It's
Yeah,
not
right.
like
It's another thing too.
yeah, like they're just like, hey, Shane, you're here. Come and do this thing so we can see if this sparks some interest.
I mean, there's no rules, right? There's nothing stopping someone from just turning up and shanking Shane and taking him off TV.
I thought that's what the Hurt Business were going to do at the end of Raw and then just take it over. But it seems like Shane is going to be back next week and the week
Like,
after.
that would have been great. He's just talking to the camera and they just hoist him up onto the platform while he's talking and just beat the fuck out of him. That would have been so much better. Oh.
I'm not thinking the no rules, but there are rules, but we just don't have them figured out yet, so we're just going to do whatever type of thing. That's for sure.
Hey, well, at least it's unlikely to have like a situation where, I don't know, a superstar gets attacked, a superstar's manager gets attacked, and it's a disqualification for some reason.
Yeah, what the hell was going on? It was what was it? Asuka attacked Bailey, and that's
Yeah, and
no
that
contest.
DQ'd Shayna Baszler against Sasha Banks for some reason.
God, I hate when they do crap like that, where they're just like, "That's the end of the match," and you're like, "Well, you couldn't have written anything else. This is pre-scripted," and then they're like, "Nope, no, we can't take an extra 10 seconds to think of another way around this. We don't want Shayna to beat Sasha, and we don't want Sasha to beat Shayna. Okay, well then why'd you book them in a match? Well, I didn't fucking book this." It's like, oh yes, you did. You're the writers. You write it. If you don't, then who else does? So, as far as writing it, let's go in that direction. This is fake. Obviously, it's the dreaded F word in pro wrestling, but this isn't real MMA. It's not actually Eric from the Viking Raiders fucking someone up. And we've all seen the Brawl for All in the past. I assume almost everybody has the same opinion of the Brawl for All should not be brought back. But I will make the argument, not only could they potentially have called this Brawl for All, they have Raw in the name anyway, and maybe try to capitalize on some of that and maybe try to make up for it a little bit if this ends up being better. But if you script what's supposed to be kind of considered rougher and more realistic, is that more ridiculous than just trying out an actual thing? Or is it just a matter of they can't possibly do it, so let's just ignore the fact that they'll never do anything like that ever again and just be okay with the fact that it's scripted?
Well, I personally don't think that a return to something like Brawl for All would be terrible. It's been 22 years. I know that when it happened, it was a dumpster fire, but since then, combat sports have picked up astronomically, and everybody understands what combat sports are, so you can figure out a way to work it, but they have that weird stigma that they'll never be able to get around it. But I don't even think that's what they're going for here. I just think they felt like, oh well, if we do short little fights that look like MMA fights, people will think it's cool.
I mean, I kind of get a sense of when you're trying to present Raw Underground as like this big whole Fight Club situation where this is where the shooters and the collegiate athletes and the big tough MMA style fighters go, it makes it feel like the other Raw show is fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I know entire thing is fake because it's wrestling, but you don't watch wrestling and you just say, "Oh, that guy got clothesline, that's fake. That guy got taken off the top rope, that's fake as well." You don't go there and just look at it and just think that everything you're seeing is fake in front of you. You go there for a bit of an escape and just to be entertained and to see a simulated sport experience. And so, if you're trying to present something as like, "Oh, this is the gritty real. This is where the real men and women like fight and all that other side of things," then it just makes the other side of the stuff seem hokey. It's like the people that will never appear on Underground, like, I don't know, I can't say for certain, but I think it's unlikely that someone like, I don't know, a Ricochet or a Cedric Alexander will appear, or an Angel Garza will appear on Underground at any point in time. And it makes them seem less impressive because they won't go and fight with the real fighters. And then you get around to the point of, like I said earlier, if you're going to watch like combat fighting, then you should watch combat fighting because they're going to do it a lot better because they're actually hitting each other and it's an actual sport. When you present it in a sports tournament, yes, you can obviously predetermine it, which has its advantages, but it also means that it looks like shit because people aren't actually laying into each other.
And I mean, let's be honest, like there's benefits to scripted and fake stuff. Like, you can get value out of watching a fake football game in a movie, for instance. It's not a real football game. The contest is scripted, that kind of thing, but it still can be fun. And there's value to that kind of stuff. And I can understand where people can look at this and say, well, if I do my suspension of disbelief for the regular in-ring stuff, and then I just think of this as it's a different aspect of that, and they're all supposed to be real, even though we know it's all scripted, you can get away with it, but I feel like you have to make more of a distinction of why that's a separate thing. And the only way to make that distinction is to play into the no rules thing more, which you have to establish rules that are broken in order to actually make it seem like it's no rules. Because I'm not the only one here, I think. If you disagree with me, go ahead and tell me, but that it doesn't feel like there's no rules, right? Like, the referee's like, okay, stop doing this, stop doing that. Well, then why the fuck's there a referee? Shouldn't it just be whoever gets knocked out and can't fight for themselves at that point? Or,
I mean, even in Fight Club, they'd tell people to jump off of each other and shit. I think they're just, I guess when they're saying there's no rules, the actual fighting mechanics you use are like you allowed to do whatever you want.
So, like, I would like to see them do stuff like gouge somebody's eye.
Yeah,
well, they've already done that recently.
I'd like to see I'd like to see more chokeholds and stuff like that. There's a lot more they can do.
Well, it's like what you were talking earlier about how you're drawing comparisons to Brawl for All. When I'm seeing this, I'm seeing Bloodsport, which is the thing that they were doing, like an indie show across WrestleMania weekends that GCW I think were doing, which was MMA style pro wrestling.
Bloodsport. It was Bloodsport.
Yeah, Bloodsport, yeah. And I just don't... I saw them do it, and I think they kind of got the right balance right, and maybe WWE can try and follow that lead, but I just don't think they have the right people for it. It's, as odd as it sounds, they do have people that obviously have a lot of size and have a lot of MMA, MMA or amateur experience, but
that's what I was thinking, because like not everybody that's an amateur wrestler is suited for this. There's a lot of amateur wrestlers that can't stand getting punched in the face and don't go into MMA for that reason. You've got guys like Dolph Ziggler that, while he has a collegiate background, does not fit the environment whatsoever. So you're right on the money with that.
But it's just a case of they do have people in the company that were involved in the Bloodsport series, so people that would fit into it. Matt Riddle, Timothy Thatcher, Karrion Kross, they're all involved in that whole series of shows. You have people like Bobby Lashley that could legitimately fit into this because he's been there and done that. Obviously, Lesnar would be a fit, but I don't think Lesnar would be caught dead in that environment,
No,
if I'm totally honest with you.
Not a chance that I know, Rob, you said earlier you think this is going Lesnar and
Brock
Lashley.
shows up at this underground at some point and just throws everybody around and stares off with Lashley.
I don't think that there's even necessarily a push for the Hurt Business, even though they did that. It's oddly enough. But continue where you were going, Callum.
I was just saying that you need to have, like, I think it goes back to what we were saying like very early on in this discussion, is that you need to make it look more realistic by having extra levels of violence, like whether it's like the gouging of eyes, chokeholds, like really in-depth submission holds and things like that, where you're just like wrenching the arms and legs out in different places and stuff of that ilk. Because if you're going to present it the way they presented it in the first week, it just looks phony. It doesn't look like wrestling, which isn't going to appeal to wrestling fans. It doesn't look like MMA, so it's not going to appeal to MMA fans. It's this weird bastardization, which is going to essentially, MMA fans are going to look at it and go, oh, this is fake as shit. And WWE fans are going to look at it, wow, this isn't actually wrestling. I don't care about it.
Yeah.
I want to see shit like Pete Dunne does, where he grabs somebody's fingers and yanks at them, and just nasty, gritty, different present. You can still do pro wrestling, but just present it differently. It doesn't have to be this weird hybrid.
And this is a weird example of somebody to pick from, because obviously he can't do it. But like, remember how when Umaga would be fighting people, he'd be kind of like, not like smashing their face into things and like screaming and whatever, but he had like a different presentation to a lot of what he was doing. I don't know why Umaga came out of my mind, but like, if
Umanga?
Umanga, if he was like doing that and he had like no boots on, just the taped ankles, if you saw more things like that throughout this, it could come off a little bit differently. But if it's just one of the Viking Raiders has on boxing gloves and fights somebody, and Dolph Ziggler took his shirt off, then who the fuck cares? Because that it's not anything different. And yeah, you need to see an actual different presentation to the way that they're fighting for it to be like, okay, this is a different league compared to that kind of thing. The way that it would be with like tag team wrestling, like, there's different rules with tag team wrestling. I know AEW doesn't think that's the case, but it's true. And like, if you see a tag team match, it's a different presentation than a singles match because you've got different dynamics to it. And if they do this whole Raw Underground thing and it ends up being that everybody just tackles, punches, and that's the end of it, nobody's going to want to care because we've already seen it before. And the next time that they cut to it, it's just going to be, okay, well, that guy in the t-shirt's going to fuck up that guy because that's just the way that it is. Like, you need something to make it feel like it's an actual different league. And if it is a different league, it needs something to fight for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to probably move on to next. Was like, what's the incentive to be a Raw Underground?
You know what would be nice? Instead of a stupid fucking belt that means nothing, they just say, hey, there's this much money up for tonight.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have, like, give them some reason to be there. Otherwise, the only reason that, oh, we put the Viking Raiders on this one because we had absolutely nothing for them on the actual show, and Dolph Ziggler's just lost his two opportunities, or his opportunity at the World Championship. Let's just throw him in the Raw Underground thing. It's like MVP just lost the United States Championship. Well, he can go beat up some losers in the Underground thing instead.
I mean, it could be for a belt. It could be for a trophy. It could be for the money at the end of the night and all that stuff. Like, they could do like the money thing and then start doing some kind of a tournament or whatever. But they need something that makes it feel like they're fighting for something other than just for the sake of fighting. It's not Fight Club itself. It's not actually just a group of guys get together and they start doing that as like therapy, and then next thing you know, Project Mayhem's gonna start happening.
Yeah, because right now, out of all of them, the only guy that's got any reason to be there is Shane, because at least they could kind of go, well, he's technically not on Raw, he's on this underground thing that he set up.
They just happen to set up in the same facility as the other stuff, and WWE, he's like, yeah, that's cool, go ahead and do it. And use also, our referee, use our talent, that kind of thing.
Also, I never have a problem of like name talent beating up jobbers. They're just there, signed up. But you need to have some understanding of what... It's not like when, in the old days, don't want to go like too far back, but when you did see a wrestler face a jobber, at least the commentators gave you some sense of what the jobber was about, or who he was, or like some of his credentials, to make it feel like the guy that was winning was actually doing something. It was just a bunch of random people around
I've got
ringside
it.
that were potentially getting in the ring.
I've got the backstory for the jobbers. So the underground's just happening under the facility, and every now and again there's just some guy standing at the top of the stairs, and he'll just drag a fucking one of the trainees from the performance center and drag him downstairs and force him.
Well, see, that's another thing to get into when we talk about. Let's go a little deeper into the idea of who to use for this kind of thing. They showed Dabba-Kato, Case of Dabbles, whatever it wants to be called. They showed him. They showed Eric, not Ivar, but Ivar was kind of just his like hype man standing next to him. Dolph Ziggler.
is too cute for this, Tony.
Yeah, Eric not so much. The Hurt Business got involved at the end there and just kind of beat some people up and whatever. And that was it, right? There wasn't anybody else I'm thinking of.
Ziggler as well, yeah.
So they showed them and they were highlighted. But if you paid attention to the people that were in the crowd, there were people that were actual names and people on the roster. Dio Madden got fucked up, which I was like, why did they bother using him for that? Isaiah Swerve Scott was in the crowd and just was a random guy that they beat the shit out of, which is like, that guy's supposed to be a big deal on NXT and 205 Live. Why are you fucking him up? If you're going to have somebody like an Eric or Dabba-Kato or whatever beat up jobbers, it doesn't matter because they're jobbers. Yet if you have them beat up anybody who's supposed to be like, if Oni Lorcan goes in there and he just is guy who gets beaten up by somebody on Raw, then no wonder WWE can't make any new stars. Every single person that's not already on Raw or SmackDown is just a nobody. And then that's the entirety of NXT and the Performance Center and everything. And you got to balance that out a little bit. You can't make stars out of people if everybody who's not already a star is a loser.
Well, it's like I was saying, like, you don't need to have it doesn't always have to be like name versus name in this underground thing. As long as you give whoever the jobber is some kind of background, just give his like amateur fight record or something like that. Say he was in the NCAA or whatever, or just give some sort of semblance that this guy it means something to kick this guy's ass. And if you don't even want to give like that sort of value, you just have okay, white guy in white shirt get beat up by Dubba D Dubba Die or whatever his name is, but just do that, then you're not going to doesn't get the guy over because he just beat some white shirt in the audience. It's like, okay.
Then they might as well use the same guys every week at that point.
You might as well just like throw Isaiah Scott or throw Leon Ruff or whoever just into it, because it doesn't matter anyway, because they at this point in time, at least to a Raw audience rather than NXT, they just don't have any name value anyway.
Right now, I think the key is don't worry about people like us. Tony and I have to watch this. Callum and Wago like wrestling, so they're always going to be kind of involved. They need to start worrying about people who haven't watched in a while, because like no matter what they do, fans with our level of knowledge are always going to be like, well, that's stupid, they're fighting for a fake amount of money, we know it's fake. There's nothing they could do to make it seem rational. So as long as they provide an entertaining show for people who aren't us, they might have a chance at something here, which is why I think they thought they could sacrifice Swerve Scott or Dio Madden again, poor guy. But eventually, they're gonna have to give us something, even if it's just Dabba-Kato being the next big challenger for McIntyre.
Well, if you want to get something on the merchandise shops,
Jesus,
go to Redbubble and TeePublic and check out for Fanboys Anonymous, Mark Out Moment, and a Mango Tees. There's lots of merchandise options, lots of designs, and different products. So go ahead and browse those catalogs.
I'm sure Dabba D Dabba Die Kato shirt is coming.
How good of a song is Blue?
Blue is a great song.
Well, 4 out of 10.
I hate the idea of taking like a Swerve Scott or a Dio Madden or anybody that they might end up doing in the future. If they just put like Mustafa Ali out there and he just gets his ass whooped and whatever like that. Like, I hate sacrificing people for the sake of that when you've got the go-to option of having somebody just wear a mask and you don't know who it was that got fucked up. I think that they need to play into that a little bit. But there are lots of people that I think could work on this, and I kind of wanted to toss some names out there. Not everybody, obviously, that were on the roster, and then there's plenty of people that I'm sure that nobody would even bother suggesting. Like, nobody's going to say, well, this is where we should utilize Austin Theory instead of something else, or that, this is the next thing for Randy Orton to take care of, for Jinder Mahal, or whatever. But kind of, I'm going to toss out some names. I want to know if you guys kind of think yay or nay, sort of. AOP.
I mean, they should be, based on,
I mean,
based on their
both have
background.
Yeah, they both fought in Bellator.
If they can stay fit long enough to actually get into Raw Underground, then maybe.
And which one's the one that's injured right now? Razor, I think.
Who cares?
I believe so.
I don't even know if he's still injured or not, but maybe they wrote off Aleister Black to repackage him, and if so, maybe.
Nah. Too much. His entire style's fucking indie kicks. It wouldn't work there.
Yeah, I think it's good if you were to do some sort of more cinematic presentation, but it's a bit too, like, nobody would do his style of fighting in MMA, I don't think.
There's a lot of styles that don't show up in MMA, because if you used them in MMA, you'd get your fucking head kicked in. And that's why nobody fights like Aleister Black.
I mean, he'd probably change up his style, but he would need to adjust it. He couldn't couldn't fight the way that he wrestles right now.
We talked about Lashley, Lesnar, Samoa Joe. I know Liv Morgan said she wants to be a part of this. That can't possibly happen. That's a guaranteed no. Liv Morgan would not be a good fit for this.
He'd be great for Shayna Baszler.
Shayna Baszler, yeah.
The other two that can't get a fucking the word in on NXT.
Duke and Shafir.
Marina, Duke and Shafir. So I would allow that.
They are people I'd buy into. Liv Morgan, Lana, that group. No. If they bring people over from different things that aren't just on Raw, that opens up to a lot of other things. I mean, we got Swerve Scott, so we know that at least the NXT people, but maybe people from SmackDown get moved over. Maybe they do have a draft or something like that. It'd be kind of interesting to see what they would do with somebody like a Cesaro, I think.
That'd be real good. Nakamura, Sheamus even would do pretty good in an environment like this.
I'll take a pass on all three of those.
I'd be interested in Drew Gulak.
Gulak would work in like the actual amateur stuff side of things. I don't know if how good his like stand-up game or the actual like striking side of it is, but I'd be interested in seeing like a match between him and Daniel Bryan in that environment.
I was about to say I'd take him to Daniel Bryan, fucking Timothy Thatcher.
Timothy Thatcher's like a must-have for this thing.
Yeah.
If they wanted to debut Timothy Thatcher on the main roster, then this is the environment to do it in.
I would agree with that.
Obviously, Matt Riddle, of course, we mentioned him before. 100% in for the Miz, right?
Absolutely.
I think Shorty G could work in this environment.
They're doing something with him. They have him turn heel this past week and do this whole thing with joining up King Corbin. They have to make him not be Shorty G anymore. And if he just goes back to being Chad Gable, then maybe Chad Gable moves over and does that, yeah. Maybe they repackage Jackson Riker, Steve Cutler, Wesley Blake in some fashion if they don't want to do that tag team anymore.
Yeah.
If they're not fond of the Chad Gable name, they should just go with Chad, because it's a meme now to call people a Chad.
Chad.
What about Chode Gable instead?
He's a bit of a dick.
Then you kind of have a mix of the two.
Let's see. Maybe I wouldn't see like a Lars Sullivan or Mojo or any of those kind of guys. No women on SmackDown that strike out to me as
Sonya.
being.
Sonya Deville.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Sonya's on there. Yeah, Sonya would work.
Her, Shayna Baszler, and I can't think of anyone else.
Because they're not going to do this with Mandy. They're not going to do it with Lacey or Dana Brooke or Tamina or Carmella or any of those. A guy that I think could be really cool with this, Arturo Huas.
Who?
He used to be Adrian George on NXT, who was only popping up a little bit here and there, but he's wrestled a lot on Evolve, and I think he's like a jiu-jitsu specialist or something like that.
Yeah, and it would be good. I
Capoeira?
think he'd be a really good fit for this.
He's Brazilian, if I remember correctly. So it might be like somewhere along those lines. I don't know exactly what his specialty is, but he kind of had already a gimmick of wrestling without shoes on, having a lot of strikes, like that kind of thing. He could be a good fit for that, I think.
Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish would both be good on this side of things.
That'd be interesting.
Kyle O'Reilly, especially Bobby Fish, I'm not too sure about. I'd have to think about it more.
And Walter's not stateside, right? Because
Nah.
Walter would be fun for this.
You know who would be fun and wouldn't fit at all, but that's exactly why I would like to see them be a part of this? Breezango. Just for one episode. Just have them come out and do whatever the hell they can think of to do. I would think that would be hilarious.
What do you guys think of Kevin Owens?
He was called
He's
the
a
prize
prize
fighter.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of interesting if they went in that direction. He's got nothing else that he's doing right now, except for he's going to get his ass kicked by Randy Orton next week.
I think he's one of those ones where you'd kind of have to present him as a bit more of that, because I don't know, I don't assume that he has anything in terms of an amateur background.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of the guys where you can think of the more violent, hardcore style. Maybe they incorporate weapons. He's the perfect guy for just a brawl.
Well, yeah. Well, I was thinking, Karrion Kross is a perfect fit on both sides of that equation. You could probably, if you're looking at more of the hardcore side, you maybe looking at someone like a Killian Dane, Oney Lorcan.
Those are two other ones. Dijak, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, maybe not Dijak so much, because he seems like a bit more of just a straight up wrestler. Maybe like a Tommaso Ciampa would be a good fit, or trying to look at some other ones which are more hardcore focused. I guess you can coax Kane back out of retirement for this.
I could see Xia Li being a part of it. She's got some martial arts background.
Mercedes Martinez.
Oh, she could fuck some people up. I'm pretty sure. Mia Yim, maybe. She might be kind of fun with that.
You present Ripley a bit like that as well.
Yeah, Ripley. Like, there's a big disparity between somebody like a Rhea Ripley who could go in there and beat the shit out of people, and somebody like a Casey Catanzaro, which is like you can't possibly put her in that scenario and have me believe it. You know, great athlete in her own way.
Like, if you can establish that, hey, yeah, you can use whatever's around you. Casey could probably think of some innovative offense and use weapons and stuff.
There aren't even any ropes. What could you do?
Here's an example of where I don't think Dolph
walls.
Ziggler belongs. Is there an example of where I don't think Dolph Ziggler belongs? If somebody said, "Hey, Rhea Ripley beat the shit out of Dolph Ziggler in a fight," I'd believe it.
yeah, that would actually work in getting her over pretty quickly.
Maybe like a Tyson T-Bone.
I don't even know who that is.
NXT UK.
If you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel, if you're going into.
But you know what though? Why not use him as one of the people that jobs out?
Because you can't get him over here.
You can't get him over here in this pandemic, but if this continues, like, he'd be a good jobber for this, I think, maybe.
He's also kind of like a big dude for a UK wrestler, so it'll be it'd be a good sized body for someone to knock around.
Yeah, like, I could see them doing that. I mean, we know we got Dabba-Kato. Seems like he's going to be a big part of this, and that's kind of interesting because while ago when Babatunde first popped up, it seemed like they were just going to bring him up into the main roster and just have him be big guy, and they didn't do anything with NXT in a long time. So now it's like he's finally doing this, and he's Dabba-Kato, and he's like this type of fighter. Okay, like I'm okay with it.
Hey, what happened to I was thinking the NXT guy that was there for a while. He got released, right? The one that was supposed to be like the biggest.
The guy with the thing. You gotta give us more to go on that.
Beat the fuck up.
Good stuff.
Dan Matha.
Mojo beat the fuck up. Yeah.
Dorian Mack. Yeah, he got released.
Well, he'd have been good for this.
He was a part of that whole football crowd though, with like Tino Sabatelli and Riddick Moss and all that.
You didn't even mention Oscar as part of this one. It'd be like for the women's side of things.
Oh, Oscar! I thought you said Oscar. Oscar.
Oscar, yeah.
Oscar De La Hoya. Like it's kind of. Legitimately sitting there going, why don't I remember who Oscar is? Yeah, I mean, Asuka, if they have her do that, like if they do have a women's side of this, I could see Asuka being a part of that. I'd buy into her fucking somewhat up more than I would, some Joe Schmo kind of thing or something.
Her YouTube channel's kind of ruined any chance of me thinking she's tired like vicious. She just comes off as adorable, so.
Well, we're talking
Yeah.
Asuka, not Kana. So. But you know what, though? Let's talk about the girls, because the girls are an extra side of things. So far, they haven't had any women fight on there. Yet they've had these
go-go dancers.
Stripper-esque kind of girls on the side. And I'm of two opinions about this in particular, too. I think you're in a different era, it works really well. You're in a different era, you make it work a lot better. Right now, I can't see this working out because, number one, if you want to see hot girls, they're not doing a good enough job with this. Like, they're not wearing anything skimpy. They weren't some knockout wearing, bikini types of things or whatever like that. So you're just going to click on the internet. You're just going to, you have an easier time just going on Pornhub or something like that than watching this. Number two, I think we're kind of past that stage where it's just, we're not entirely, let me put it out that way. We're not entirely past this idea of the hot girl in there because this is dedicated towards guys and guys love looking at hot girls. Of course they do. But they do it for UFC. It's just like in the background, there's girls wearing, sports bras and whatever like that. And there's the ring girls that hold up the card and says round whatever. Like, we're still kind of antiquated in that way where there's no purpose other than just, I'm going to see some guys fuck each other up. And also, woo, girls.
Hey, you said you wanted Breezango to do something. There should be a ring, boys.
Why not? That'd be funny as hell. Like, and the third thing about it is, if you're going to go ahead and do this kind of thing, you're opening up the way that everybody is nowadays, people to bitch and complain and say that this is demeaning and that this is something that they don't want to see because it's sexualizing the women on the side, and why don't they get a chance to fight because they didn't get a chance to fight on this kind of thing and all that. I can't see that working out.
I think it's
We're just past the era of needing the Nitro girls. I don't think it makes it a more gritty or underground feeling. It actually feels kind of misplaced and weird.
This isn't Tokyo Drift where it's like, let's have the hot girl in her short shorts be the one that says, all right, now you can go race. Right?
I think it's just fucking dumb. I hope they phase that part out. It's just so pointless. Maybe because they put the porn music on, they thought they needed some girls to be dancing so it felt less awkward. But just drop the music and get rid of the girls. It's if you want girls to be on the show, have them actually fight. Even
more awkward was the fact that they were fighting. They started bickering, and it was like, hey, like, there's no rules, but stop arguing and keep dancing.
Yeah, but I think it was like, I don't know, maybe you guys can fight next week. Callum, I assume you're in agreement with them, so I'll let you go next.
Well, I don't think that it's really adding anything in the same way that with this weird hybrid of pro wrestling and MMA, this is presenting the women in the sense of that you don't want to go full on with it because you're worried about how you're going to come across and you're PG and that people will take offense to it, but you still want to do it so you're really presenting some sort of mesh where these girls are dancing but not going super sexualized with it. And so what's the point of even having them there in the first place? It's like you either go all in or you don't, and you live with the consequences one way or the other. I don't think they're really adding anything to the whole presentation of it.
I think it's fine. I think anybody who wants to say, well, I'm offended by this, and I've said this, privately in our group chats, they had 12 women on Raw in multiple segments, used in multiple different ways, proving that they have an actual stacked women's wrestling division, so nobody can complain you're not using your women. What the hell is this?
Oh, they still will, though. You can do 100 things perfectly right and the 101st thing wrong, and that's all that matters.
I get that, but like I'm also just they're not hired by the company. It's not like, when hey, you've hired 20 women and 18 of them are just used for bra and panties matches. These are some random women that nobody knows. It's adding to what they think the aesthetic of this thing will be. And it's not like I get it.
I don't think it does add to the aesthetic. Well, I do agree with you that there's ethically there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just more women getting a paycheck.
Yeah, it's like my issue with it is not due to the fact that, well, my issue is, one, it's going to draw that kind of backlash anyway, and you're adding nothing to the overall presentation. So why even open yourself up to some sort of unnecessary attacks by people? But there's nothing ethically wrong with it. It's just a case of, what's the point of doing it if you're not going to go all the way with it? And I'm not, I mean, all the way is like they should be just like ripping all their clothes off or anything like that in any situation. But it's not like just seeing like girls in like hot pants or whatever dancing. It's like, oh, it's okay, it's a novelty, but it's nothing that's like nowadays is really going to get people going when there is Pornhub readily available at any opportunity.
My argument here, Alexa Bliss's back was shown and people lost their life.
Yeah, but she's a name. It's like any celebrity. Like, as soon as it's a celebrity, then you're interested. If it's just some random girl that's just dancing around, then okay, bit seen that, done that.
Now, if they were to go and say, well, Alexa Bliss and Scarlett and Mandy Rose and Zelina Vega and like all these other like super attractive name people on the roster, if they were to put them out there, and like, look how all the support that Liv Morgan's got in the Sexy Superstars tournament. Liv Morgan wants to be a part of this. If they were to, I'm not saying they're going to, I'm not saying that they even should, but if they were to say, hey, Liv Morgan is hot, she's got a big following, she's wearing a revealing kind of outfit, even more so than the girls that were in this thing were, which is funny. Let's have her be like one of these hot girls on the side, and we're gonna make this really dark and grungy and super for like the guys type of thing and whatever, and try to maybe market it that way for the sponsorships and stuff, and say like, hey, once you get to this era, like now we're gonna really target that TV 14 plus type of crowd, and we're gonna make this real dark and whatever. Maybe that opens that up for more marketing. Maybe that opens them up for a younger crowd to want to watch, because it's a different era, now compared to what it was when people our ages were kids, where it was like, oh, I'm going to watch the Man Show because that's like the best thing I can get for some TNA because I don't have the internet as reliable as that kind of thing. But there are still people that watch even stuff like the Kardashians or whatever just because they think that the people are hot on the show. You could get away with that, and you could also do something where if you go full force on it, maybe you branch it out in a different way, where if they do some extra show, like some WWE Network show, where it's, because they have like age restricted things on the network, right? I don't remember for sure how that works, but don't they have it where like the Too Hot for TV thing or whatever like that, like that oh god, what's his name?
Jerry Springer.
I was gonna say Seinfeld. I'm like, I know it's a Seinfeld. The Springer thing, like, I think that they have it to where you can potentially lock some of those things. I don't know for sure. Maybe they aim to do that in the future.
Yeah, parental controls. I'd never like experimented with them to see how far.
No point in us doing that. But like, if they wanted to, and they wanted to say, we're gonna have WWE Underground, and once a week we're gonna have this TVMA fighting type of thing. Maybe even a real version of it if it catches on so much that they can break into their own MMA type of thing or something like that. Maybe the way that you handle moving on and doing a different thing with WWE at this point is to say, fuck it. Like, let's stop doing some PG things on some of our avenues and have those bra and panties, mud wrestling, half naked or fully naked people fighting each other and blood going all over the place type of things. Maybe that's where this goes,
We won't know.
I doubt it's ever going to go that far.
It won't.
I don't think it'll ever hurt to go in that direction, because they're leaving money on the table when they ignore certain demographics, and it's just as simple as that.
I mean, put it this way: do I agree that that's the way that the world should work, or anything to that extent? Probably not. But if you start taking that approach in the third hour, their ratings are going to immediately
They're gonna go up. They're gonna go up
because that's what people watch. That's the sort of like. That's the thing that people tune in for. That's what they tuned in for in the Attitude Era. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin and the fact that they could see people wearing handprints on their breasts.
Right.
That's what the Attitude Era was.
And the idea that we've somehow gotten, well, we've matured and we're less sexualized. How many OnlyFans have popped up during the pandemic?
It's true.
I'm sorry. I get it, dude. I get it. But you know what? You can tout and sing the praises of AEW all day long. They're not doing things where you've got 12 women being utilized in great capacity throughout their show. WWE can afford a little bit of sex appeal, and it won't seem like the end of the world.
And also not saying don't just limit to the women as well. I'm pretty sure quite a lot of the female audience as well would like to see like Breezango coming out in short shorts and just like gyrating around the ring for a little while. Like appeal to audiences with that.
Hey, we do the men's and the women's bracket. Fair is fair,
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you brought up the OnlyFans thing. Let's be honest. Why does TikTok exist? It's just people. But for the most part,
it depends who you ask. Like Trump would probably give you a different answer.
Well,
but,
yeah, it's for the most part. It seems what goes around is you either have quick little meme type of like things like it used to be on Vine, or the predominant thing that's pushed more than anything else, good looking or maybe sometimes not even good looking people that are lip syncing music and twerking and such. Where it's like that whole platform is built off of good-looking girl on screen. Sex sells. It's just a guarantee. It's always sold. It always will. And yeah, it's a little lowbrow to do that, but Smark Out Moment built itself on the Sexiest Superstars tournament. For the longest time, the number one post that was on the website was a notice that Lacey Von Erich had posted some nude photos that were out there.
Why are we pretending that wrestling is like Hulk culture or whatever or something like that?
It totally isn't.
It appeals to the lowest common denominator, and it always has.
Absolutely.
And it always will for the most part, because it's not a gentleman's sport. It's not, it's not even something like, I mean, I'm not the biggest sports fan in any capacity, but it's like, if somebody says to me that they're a big baseball fan or they're a big football fan or whatever like that, there's less to be ashamed of than there is when it comes to being a pro wrestling fan, because pro wrestling does have that kind of like the connotation of just being like, you do realize that it's fake, right? And like, oh, well, why are you watching this soap opera? And like different things like that. It's lowest common denominator stuff for a lot of it, for sure. And if you're going to appeal to the lowest common denominator, appeal to all facets of the lowest common denominator.
The thing is that, because of like the rise of the MCU and stuff, nerd culture, for lack of a better term, got popular across the board. And then it, wrestling kind of falls into that. And then it became, well, this isn't just a bunch of neckbeards in their basement. Women watch this too, and they want to feel represented. And I get that. But I also know that I'm on wrestling Twitter a lot for the job. And there are some people who are just 24/7 talking about which dudes they would want to bang. And you can appeal to that on both sides. And I think it would increase ratings. And yeah, you're going to piss off a certain section of people, but haven't we hit the point where like the lynch mob is gonna want you dead anyway? Like
Becky Lynch mob?
Yeah, yes. And you can afford to do this, I think. I'm not saying, go full on Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson here, but you can afford a little bit of sex appeal.
Especially if you market it as the last hour is a different type of thing. If you don't want your kids to watch it, turn it off at 10.
Yeah, be a parent. If you're going to bitch about that, that's you not wanting to be a parent.
The reality of it is, we talk about how the audience isn't just a bunch of neckbeards anymore, but still the core audience are a bunch of introverted people that don't go out very often and just consume wrestling constantly and nonstop. That's still a huge part of their base. Most of them are still men, and shit, you go where their money is.
Yeah, it's if they try it and it fails, what's the harm? They're gonna try plenty of other things that are gonna fail. They've tried 1,000 things that have failed. If they try to do this without it, it's gonna fail. If they try to do it with it, it might. I mean, it's the Brawl for All failed. The wild card rule didn't do everything. What do they call the most recent version of that? It was like the talent exchange or something like that. No, that was
Yeah,
the NXT
something.
and ECW or whatever the hell. I don't know.
No, it was something like the Superstar Exchange, because you're thinking of the new Superstar Initiative on ECW. It wasn't that. But it was something that stupid, and it didn't go anywhere.
It's just like there's lots of ways that this Raw Underground thing can work, but one of the ways that it's guaranteed to fail is if they do exactly what they've done with every other concept that has failed, which is have no plan, which we already know they have no plan, think that they can figure out a plan in the future and just kind of drag it on and just go, well, we'll figure it out as it happens. Eventually switch this over to a Shane McMahon thing, establish no rules and no difference to the overall product, intercut it in the middle of nowhere, have it mean nothing because there's nothing on the line, have the potential of people complaining about the girls on the side that don't even draw in that market that they're going to go for, and make no stars out of it. If that's all they're going to go with, there's no positives that comes along with it,
Yep. It's just a case of, like we were saying earlier, you have to, if you're going to do this, and I'm saying that even though I'm not very confident in the future prospects of this whole initiative, because I've watched enough WWE to know that this is going to fail, and it's going to fail pretty quickly. It's just, if they want it to have any semblance of succeeding, they need to back it and say, if this is the third hour and this is going to be the really gritty stuff, and we're going to go really heavy duty fighting and a bit more sex appeal or a bit more just pure violence on top of just the actual overall wrestling program, then you need to go all the way with it. And if it fails, it fails, but you're not going to get anywhere or see any improvement by doing some sort of weird mix of what you're currently already doing and something which vaguely resembles MMA or Fight Club.
How good is Fight Club, by the way?
So good.
Well, I've heard
Great
it's good,
movie,
but
but overrated.
I've heard some people say good things, but they don't want to talk about it very often. I don't know why.
If you want us to talk more about it, fanboysanonymous.com is the place where you would find that, because that is where I do movie stuff over on that channel. So check out that website, fanboysanonymous.com. Follow the Facebook and Twitter just the same as you'd be following the Smark Out Moment stuff. And if you want more of anything, Fanboys or Smark Out Moment in particular, then consider donating to the Patreon. Patreon for both of them is the same. $1 is appreciated and goes a long way the more that more people do it. $5 is an ad block forgiveness thing. $10 is that, and onward up gives you access to Patreon exclusive episodes. And we also have the Pick Your Poison tier. So maybe you are a big fan of Fight Club. Fight Club's one of my favorite movies. I actually just did my top 50 favorite movies thing. I've been trying to add movies to Letterboxd out of my list of like all the movie ratings that I've done and stuff. So Fight Club's on my top 50 favorite movies. And if you want us to talk about Fight Club, you're kind of shit out of luck when it comes to that. But if you want us really badly, then Patreon's Pick Your Poison tier, if you donate to that and you request it, we will do some kind of like a review point, or maybe even like a watch along fan tracks or something like that. But same thing for Smark Out Moment. If you want us to maybe watch the old Brawl for All and do something like that, or talk more about it, because we touched upon it here, but we haven't really ever done like a full-on Wrestling with the Past Brawl for All or something like that. Pick Your Poison tier on Patreon. Take advantage of it. Overall, my main question, now that we've gotten a lot of this stuff out of the way, is this going to work and save Monday Night Raw? Or is this going to die out very soon? And if so, when does it die?
I give it 3 weeks.
I
2
think
months.
I think it will be dead by 3 weeks in, but I think they'll stretch it out for at least until like October.
I got a feeling if they don't do something with SummerSlam with this, I'm kind of feeling that they probably won't, but they should. By all means, they should have like, we're going to advertise that this Raw Underground fight is going to happen at SummerSlam, something like that. Or at the very least, Payback, but SummerSlam would make more sense. I don't think we get past September, at the very least.
It'd
Maybe
be cool
we
if
get...
Payback was just all underground fights. Make it like an hour and a half special event.
You know what? I'd be down with it. Because they're at a time frame right now where they can't have SummerSlam happen and then the next week Payback and not have killed the SummerSlam card by making it all like, well, you know, this match didn't have a real ending, but you can check it out at Payback because they had both of their shoulders were down and whatever, like that kind of thing. Or there was a double count out, so we're going to have the rubber match at Payback, and that's why we only have 1 week. It's another go-home show, or they can't set up stuff ahead of time. They can't do that. If they just said, because they haven't announced Payback yet officially, but if they said something like, we're bringing Payback back, and that's going to be a full 1 hour special, even, of Raw Underground, that'd be cool. And then that would be the type of thing that maybe people would go, shit, they're actually interested in this. Like they're really invested and they're gonna do something with it. And maybe I should get on board as opposed to what the hell's this crap? It'll go away in a couple weeks. Because I don't think any of us are really, and that I mean us as far as all of us on this panel and you guys listening, I don't think any of us is really looking at this as being like, this is going to turn it around and this is the big savior moment kind of thing.
No,
It might
this is
be.
a turd in the punch bowl.
Yeah, just don't get us wrong. We want it to be the thing that turns it
Right.
around. We want it to be like the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of pro wrestling, and it's going to just bring millions of people in to watch it, and it's going to be entertaining every single week. But we know better.
Or at least we have every reason to be skeptical because
Yeah.
history. It's not like this company's a year old and it's like, well, maybe they're going to do something different, turn it around. It's been decades. We know how a lot of these things work. And I guess we're just going to have to figure out what happens when it happens. Obviously, we are going to be along for this ride just the same as everybody else is. So if 1 week it turns around and it makes it a lot better, I'm sure that we'll talk about that on the hot tags that week or make it a special going over about it or whatever it might be, a special dark cast or something. Maybe if this comes into the way that it could get further and further, bigger and bigger, maybe we start doing separate coverage and factoring that in somehow. Maybe there's other things popping up on the website as far as like a ranking system or a fighting league, or I don't know what the hell we can end up doing in the future. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along because we can't influence it like WWE can. They should have it figured out. We have to figure it out as it happens. But whatever happens, positive or negative, we'll be here. So we hope that you guys are too. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. I've plugged a lot of things in the meantime. I will talk about what's coming up next on the show after everybody else gives their plugs. So who wants to take the baton and do
I'll take the
their
baton.
section?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. You can check out Fightful and WrestleZone.com. Those are the 2 sites I work for and do news coverage. I will be on the Rest Friends podcast sometime this month, so check that out wherever you get your podcast. I'll plug that more when I have more details. And I also do the Paul Heyman Smackdown podcast with Callum Wiggins, but Callum Wiggins is going to tell you more about that. Callum?
So, the Paul Heyman retrospective podcast, where we go back to the year 2002 and 2003 to revisit all of the Smackdown episodes that Paul Heyman was the head writer on. We're currently heading towards the next episode will be in your feed as usual on Saturday for Saturday the 8th of August. So big shows every single week. We're going back and just checking out what Ruthless Aggression Era had to offer at this point in time, and it's a damn sight more entertaining than Raw Underground and everything else that they're doing nowadays. But hopefully you join us for that journey. You can follow me on Twitter at Wikimeister14, and obviously check out all the great articles on smarkoutmoment.com. And over to Wago.
Why did Janetti kill the guy? Just cut it off there.
Jesus
End the
Christ.
episode there. I'll be returning to streaming. I'll have more news in the next week. Everything's almost set up, so more news to come out. See you guys next time.
And for the next episode of our main event side of things, the current plan is to do something that had been suggested before. So set up for TakeOver 30. We will do, unless things change, a top rope list of the NXT superstars, one for the men's division, one for the women's division, and one for an overall top 10. And we're going to kind of present a new format a little bit that's kind of a combination of what the old top rope list is and what the Mount Rushmore and Call the Spot kind of is a little bit. It's sort of a hybrid, and we'll see how that goes. If something else completely different changes and we need to do a different main event, then we'll put that on the back burner and we'll do that another time. Maybe even if we do that as like a dark cast or something like that. I don't know. Somewhere down the line we'll do that. Just the same as somewhere down the line we'll do the AEW roster tier list, and we'll do plenty more episodes of Wrestling is 2020, and we'll do other Mount Rushmores and other fan outs tables and different things like that. But that's the current game plan for the next main event. The next actual podcast you're going to be listening to from us is going to be the Hot Tags, where we're going to talk about the Retribution stable, the Justice, I don't know how they're pronouncing it, trademark, the AEW Deadly Draw tournament that just began, all the TV stuff that we didn't go over other than the Raw Underground stuff, and whatever else happens throughout the week. And maybe the Marty Jannetty stuff will have more information. Who knows? I don't know. But if you just keep paying attention to the YouTube channel here, and you keep checking out smarkoutmoment.com, and you subscribe and you follow us all over the place on social media at smarkoutmoment, and you subscribe to all these different platforms and all that other kind of stuff, then we'll see you when we see you. But thanks for listening to this, everybody. And this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we're being counted out.